Hello, everyone, and I like to start podcast episodes with good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you are listening to this podcast or watching the video of this podcast. This podcast episode of Educating with Ease will take on a slightly different flavor than previous episodes. In previous episodes, we spent time exclusively talking to members of our school community, staff members in particular, and getting to know them better. And trying to make our large community smaller. We've talked a lot about the 4 E's and kind of the core values of our school district. But today is a little different. We're going to bring in a number of guests, not just 1 or 2, but we actually have 4 participants or contributors to this episode. And we're going to be discussing rights of students who are immigrant students in the North Penn School District. But that goes well beyond just students who are immigrants and goes to all students and families within our community. So I'm really excited about today's episode. We will start with some folks in the school district and then kind of go out to our Lansdale community and a bit further as well and bring in some topic experts or content area experts, if you will. So with that, we're going to start with 2 wonderfully talented, incredible individuals who work here in the North Penn School District. Let me first introduce my friend and colleague, our Director of Curriculum, Dr. Pamula Hart. Boom, there she is. Hey, Pam, how are you?
I'm great. How are you today?
I'm doing great. We're recording this on a Friday afternoon.
Yes.
The sun is shining, and some Fridays, all Fridays feel good. Some Fridays feel better than others. This is a good one.
I agree with that.
And next, we're going to have as an honored guest one of our wonderfully talented principals in the North Penn School District from Hatfield Elementary, Mrs. Rita Whalen. Good afternoon, Rita.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bauer and Dr. Hart. How are you?
Doing great.
Great to see you.
Great to see you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. And the reason we're having Pam and Rita join us to start is Rita being the principal of Hatfield Elementary. Hatfield is a very diverse, wonderfully, beautifully, incredible, diverse student population. And Rita has heard some concerns from students, families, staff about the rights of students. And, you know, there are articles out there and there are things said that are really untrue. And our objective here is to really inform and to let our families and students and staff know ways in which we plan to keep our students safe and to do what we do best, keeping them in school, educating them, and helping them learn on their journey. So, Mrs. Whalen,
Yes.
Let's start with you, and then we'll talk a little bit about Dr. Hart's role. And actually, why don't I tangentially real quick here, say Dr. Hart, in her role overseeing our curriculum efforts, she also oversees the administrator in charge of our ELD program, which is English Language Development. And she is involved in a lot of the equity work here in the school district and leads that about helping our students and families navigate our school system, among many, many, many other hats that she likes to wear. So, Mrs. Whalen.
Yes.
Why don't we just start, keep it very basic and just share with us, you know, when we started seeing articles, and there were articles saying that ICE agents were, you know, bashing down doors and going into schools in our community or not our community, excuse me, across the country. And there were fears. I was hearing things from principals, from staff members, and just really on the front lines in the building. What are some of the things you are hearing from our administrators across the district?
Yeah. So I would say that the concern that you raised just a moment ago was one that was very prevalent. Families very worried that ICE agents would be coming to school, will be taking children out of classrooms. Students are really afraid to come to school. We heard that from staff members as well as family members, just really not sure if the transition from home to school was a safe one. And if students were to arrive in school, would they be welcome and feel really comfortable? We actually had some families who were worried that there would be an increase in bullying, particularly for those families who have Spanish-speaking children, just really questioning citizenship, name calling, things like that they were really quite afraid of.
Okay, so some themes there, the fear of even coming to school and whether or not school is a safe place, and then potentially some elevated bullying, harassment, those types of things are fears. And we're not pointing to whether or not these are justified. We're not going to pass judgment on that, but these are the things that we're hearing from folks. I think it's important to share also that at the Montgomery County Superintendent's meeting recently, we had an ICE agent come to our meeting and talk to us and explain what is and isn't happening and directives and direction that he has received and people that he works with, which was wonderfully collaborative and supportive of students. What are some things that you're hearing from students, staff, families about like what they're concerned about, fearful of, those types of things?
Sure. So much like what Dr. Hart has shared, the concerns that we hear, whether it be from families, from students, from staff, is it safe to come to school? What happens to my child at the bus stop? What does a field trip look like? Once they come into school, what does that plan look like? From the school lens, it's the attendance piece, really being mindful and looking at those patterns in absenteeism, finding that trusted adult that can make the connection with the family to check in, social emotional well-being of students. We want our kiddos to come in and be happy and ready to learn. And some of them are coming in with the weight of the world on their shoulders, whether it be they're worried about themselves, their neighbor, their uncle. So that social emotional well-being, the interactions from students to students, and the parent engagement piece. We've worked really hard on building that parent engagement and kind of seeing in the last few weeks that they're a little bit apprehensive in connecting with us when we're reaching out to them. So just being mindful of, again, having those trusted adults where parents feel safe and comfortable to have those conversations.
Beautiful backdrop to our conversation with our next two guests, who are individuals who can start to answer some of these questions and inform the conversation. And I want to be perfectly clear. So first of all, Pam and Rita, please chime in, ask questions, ask follow-up questions. Normally I'm the host. I think the three of us are kind of co-hosting because we are so fortunate to have two individuals who are actually experts in immigration law who can kind of guide the conversation and help support the students and families in the school district and the staff. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce first someone who was introduced to us through Pam and her life as a principal prior to North Penn, Mr. Justin Mixon. Justin, here you come. Good afternoon, Justin.
Thank you, Todd. Dr. Bauer. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Justin, you want to tell us just a little 30-second blurb about yourself and just so people know who they're listening to?
Sure. I'm an immigration lawyer in Jenkintown here in Montgomery County, and I specialize in the cases for children, immigrant children, Central America, South America, from all over the world, really. And it's just a pleasure to work with you guys today and to provide some information for the families.
Thank you. Awesome. And then, so Pam introduced us to Justin, and Justin introduced us to Michael Ahlert. Michael is joining us from Lansdale. Michael, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Dr. Bauer. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Can you share just a little bit about yourself as well?
Yeah, similar to Justin, I'm an immigration attorney. I'm located here in Montgomery County. My office is in Lansdale. And I also work with a lot of immigrant youth and their families. And I look forward to the opportunity to hopefully clarifying some things and maybe dispelling some of the rumors that have been flying around the community right now.
Yes, great. Thank you both. And we're on a first name basis here on the podcast. So no more Dr. Bowers, no more Dr. Harts. Rita, I'm looking at you. I've been trying for like 10 years to get Rita to stop calling me Dr. Bauer and just call me Todd. We are colleagues. We work together. But with that, we did hear from Rita and Pam about some of the concerns that they're hearing from students and families. And I don't know if anybody wants to volunteer to start first, but first order of business is, have you heard the question, or how would you advise families who are afraid to send their children to school? They're just afraid. Like, that is a place where authorities may know the students reside. There was some rhetoric out there that now all of a sudden we would start to see ICE agents coming to school to get children. I can tell you we have not seen that in North Penn, but you certainly have a larger scope, perhaps globally, nationally, regionally, about whether or not that's the case. So Justin or Michael, any?
Yeah, I'll start. Todd, thank you. And Mike and I'll probably trade off. So yeah, I've heard it, and it's a good question, and I understand why people are concerned. There's just a lot of changes going on.
Sorry, everyone. My office is on Main Street, so.
So interestingly enough, I think the listeners might have just heard that emergency vehicle go past my office, and now they're going past your office, Michael. So
nice.
Go ahead, Justin.
Thank you. So I've been working doing legal services for immigrants since like 2001. And so it's been over 20 years, and I have never seen ICE enter a school. ICE is the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. And, they have police, they have lawyers. It's their job to enforce immigration laws. And sometimes that means giving somebody a notice to appear in court. We've never, ever, in over 20 years, seen ICE go into a school. I don't really think it's going to happen. There's plenty of other places ICE can go to find whoever they're looking for. And it's just so important, like you guys were saying already, it's so important for kids to go to school for themselves. Also, I would like to add that if children don't go to school, they're going to have a really hard time applying for something called special immigrant juvenile status, which is very important. It's a very powerful remedy for children who might be deported to protect themselves and get legal status here in the United States. But, you have to do it before you turn 18, and you have to go to school, and you got to show up and get good grades. You've got to work hard. Listen to your teachers.
That's right.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for that. One of the things, and perhaps I'm wrong about this, but the way I've been advising principals and families and administrators who have contacted me is, look, we have procedures we have to follow when it comes to student attendance. And if students aren't coming to school, we have an obligation to report that. So we need students to come to school. But what I'm hearing from Justin is, in his over 20 years in immigration law, he has never seen ICE go into a school, and he does not believe that that is going to happen. So, Michael, anything to add to that part of the conversation?
I mean, I would concur that I have also never heard of that happening either. And that, it is very important for these kids to stay in school for all kinds of reasons. And, I think that there's a lot of rumors, unfortunately, that are, that are creating fear where there doesn't need to be. It doesn't mean that people don't have reasons to be anxious right now, and that's not justified. But, before people take action on rumors, they should try to, get good information. I mean, there's a lot of people, I think, also on the internet, for example, that maybe are spreading information that isn't helpful, whether they're doing it innocently or not. And people should be very careful about what they read on the internet, what they're hearing, because those sources may not be reliable at all. And it is a time of anxiety for a lot of families, but missing out on an education is not a good solution to the situation.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you. Pam, you look like you're about to jump in.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I was thinking about, and we've talked about this quite a bit with families and staff members, is that we as a district and in every single school have a policy and a practice in place that any time an adult comes to the building, no one just walks in and visits a classroom, even if it's just a parent, right? We have safety measures in place for any visitor. And so I just think it's important for families and students to be reminded of that. If there's someone who comes, we stop at the office, we check, information. If there's information that we need, we get that. If there's an adult who's visiting who needs to see someone, we in the office facilitate that. And so I just think we have to remind ourselves that even before this moment in time, we had some really strong safety measures in place. I just want to make sure that people sort of know that in general.
Yeah, that's a great point, Pam. So even we'll go back 10 years, 12 years. I'm a high school principal, and we would have law enforcement come to the school on a somewhat regular basis, asking for information. Hey, can we see these student records? Hey, can we look at this surveillance video? And the answer to those questions is always no, in the absence of the proper documentation, right? So if there is a subpoena or warrant for the information, okay. And our law enforcement partners in this community are wonderful. We have great relationships with them. They know these things. Like they will say to me, I know I can't get the video until I get a subpoena. So to your point, Pam, there are protections in place for all students. So speaking of records and documentation, let's go back to Justin and just talk about, first of all, there's this misnomer that anyone who speaks 2 languages, anyone who is Spanish speaking or another language is an immigrant, or even more of a falsehood is that they're an undocumented immigrant. Not the case, of course. So, however, as a school district, it is my understanding that we educate all kids. Every student who lives in can prove residency in our school district. We are to educate them. That's part of the role of the public school district, right? The primary role. So, Justin, what are the laws related to not just immigrant students, but all students coming to school?
Thanks, Todd. Yeah, it's actually a really easy question to answer. It's not one of these things where like some states do this and some states do this. It's been the law since 1982. It's been very clear. The Supreme Court of the United States, in a case called Plyler v. Doe, established that all children have to go to school, can go to school regardless of race, religion, immigration status. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you've been here 5 days or 20 years. Well, I guess if you're 20, you're not in public school.
This is true.
Yeah, but doesn't matter. Immigration status does not matter at all. This was a very important case. Texas was experimenting with not paying public school education for undocumented immigrant children, and the Supreme Court solidly said, no way, we're going to educate all children in the United States. Who knows when a child is going to go from being undocumented to having immigration status? That happens all the time, right? So what, you're going to then have somebody who was an immigrant without status, and then they become a citizen but no education? I mean, so the Supreme Court was very clear. It's been the law for more than 40 years. And I'm not the school district lawyer, but I know your lawyers are very clear on this too, because it's just an easy question to answer. It's very clear.
Great. So, Michael, let's go to parent and family rights when it comes to the school district requesting such information. What if someone were to ask about immigration status of a child? Maybe I'm just a classroom teacher. And if that's too vague of a question, I apologize. But really, what are the limitations in terms of what a school district can ask and require?
Right. Thanks, Todd. I mean, I'm not an education lawyer. I'm an immigration lawyer, but my understanding is that, student records are confidential, and that, those kinds of questions, and that those kinds of questions shouldn't be asked of a student, regarding, immigration status, and so forth. And certainly no one else, has access to any student records who, isn't from the school staff itself.
Right. Beautifully said. And that is our understanding as well. We don't have that information because we can't request that information. And like Justin said, we educate all children, regardless of citizenship, immigration status, all those things. So we don't have the information, and if we did, it would be in the student's cumulative folder, which is protected by FERPA, which is the Family Education Right to Privacy Act. And there are laws, obviously, protecting that information. So wonderful. All right, so let's move into advice. Aside from the really clear advice I think we all shared at the top of the hour, which was go to school. We want you in school. We love having you in school. And we want you to be a part of our school community. But what about other things for families who are just worried? And they're hearing things and they just don't know the truth versus, what's fiction, what's true. What advice do you have for our families who are maybe new to the United States and they just don't know where can they find information, those types of things. Justin, go ahead.
Yeah, like Michael was saying, people should get solid legal advice, and that is probably not going to be from TikTok.
Oh,
Okay,
really?
so, imagine that, right? I mean, maybe there's a few nonprofits posting legal advice on TikTok, but most of what you're going to see is probably not a lawyer or a solid, organization that's there to help you. So I would say look for nonprofit organizations in this area. There's several. There's Catholic Charities. There's Hyas, Pennsylvania, where Mike and I used to work, actually. And then there's Nationality Service Center. There's nationwide organizations that will put information for immigrants in many different languages on the internet. You can get information. Just make sure it's from a nonprofit organization that advocates for immigrants. You can call those organizations locally or regionally, and you can request, hey, would you please send me some names and phone numbers for lawyers, immigration lawyers that are trusted, that will give me good advice about my case. That way you're not just searching out there in the big world of immigration lawyers you've never even heard of. So that's one way to get good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Michael, I'm sure you have another perspective, or Pam likes to say yes and. And what other advice would you offer to our families regarding not legal advice or beyond?
I mean, I thought I would piggyback on what Justin is saying about finding, trusted advice, finding good, good legal advice. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people, who might take advantage of, someone's concerns about their immigration status. It's an area of law where I think there's a lot of misinformation, and there's a lot of people on the internet and other places who perhaps put themselves forward as being knowledgeable or as being attorneys or of having the expertise to assist someone with their case, and that's just not so. And it can often lead to serious mistakes in a case. It can, essentially cause someone to lose an opportunity that they would have had otherwise. So, making a decision of who you trust and who to get advice from is important.
Got it. Okay. Pam, anything you want to chime in on any of that content?
I think that what I would share is a little bit different. I think the thing I would love for families to know is that staff members really care. And whether it's a classroom teacher, a counselor, the principal, an ESL teacher, everyone is in the schools with the expectation of really supporting children and families. And so if there are questions, we really do encourage you to touch base with an adult in the building that you feel connected to and just ask those questions, right? If someone doesn't have the answer, they will get it for you. We've had a couple of situations this year where families have prompted conversations about their children going to school virtually because they were worried, but they hadn't really talked to a teacher. They hadn't really talked to a counselor or a principal. And when we finally kind of organized the meeting with to say, listen, what's going on? It really was one small question that they had that we could have addressed. So I definitely would say, if there's ever a worry or a question, please, 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 I think as Rita shared in the very beginning, school communities really are committed to supporting families. And we hope that you feel comfortable enough just kind of answering, asking a question and knowing that we'll be able to do what we can to support you and get information that you might need.
Oh, go ahead.
Todd, if I could just add on to that, having trusted advice doesn't necessarily, and it certainly doesn't mean, just an attorney, right? I mean, as Pam's saying, the school community is a place where I think you can get trusted advice. Maybe there's other people in these kids' lives, their church community, or, other people that really have their best interests in mind. I mean, I think that's the point, right? Is to find people who have your best interests in mind, who you can get support and get information from, rather than, just strangers on the internet.
Yeah, here I thought I had TikTok on retainer, Justin. So I'm so glad you gave me that piece of advice. Michael did mention, like, before you make a mistake, right? And I want to be clear, like, the emphasis here and the whole point of this podcast is about human beings' rights, right? Like, no one's trying to circumvent, no one's trying to be disingenuous. This is about, like, no, these are the laws. This is fact-based. These are your rights. So regarding some of the things that the two of you have seen, without going too far, of course, but what are some of the common mistakes or common misnomers of families and perhaps students that you think would be great to tell our families about?
So, Todd, I'd like to focus on rights first. And there's rights in the Constitution that we all have. Whether you're undocumented, whether you have a temporary protected status under immigration law, whether you are about to get your green card or already have it. We call it green card, but it's legal permanent residence, same thing. Or whether you're a citizen, whether you were born here, you've got 3 generations here, we all have certain fundamental rights under the U.S. Constitution that can't be changed by the president like that. They can't be changed by a state or a county or a police force. And one of those basic rights is that you have the right to remain silent. If law enforcement is ever asking you questions, whether it's a detective in plainclothes or a police officer or ICE, whoever it is, it's hard to answer these questions and not get yourself in trouble or make a mistake or whatever. And so you should just you have the right to remain silent and then contact a lawyer and say, you know what, I'd really rather answer these questions with my lawyer with me. That's something everybody does, citizen or not. And you can, also you can say, I would like to wait for my attorney before you do something like open the door to your home or start answering questions or hand over paperwork or, these are rights that we all have.
Beautifully said. Michael.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course you can.
One of the questions that's definitely have come up a couple of times regarding kind of the rights piece or people not being clear is really related to if people should be carrying documents. Should I be carrying my green card? Should I be carrying my birth certificate? Should I have a passport? And I'm never quite sure of the exact answer to that. So if you're able to provide some guidance, that would be great.
Mike, did you?
Go ahead, Justin. You started on this topic.
Yeah. So the only thing that you're required to carry with you in the United States, and this is really only for immigrants, if you have a work permit that was issued to you by Homeland Security, they're kind of a red-pink color, and they usually expire in 2 or 5 years. If you have one of those, you have to carry it with you all the time. And if you're stopped and, ICE stops you and they are asking questions, you still have the right to remain silent, but you are required to have that work permit on you. Also, if you have a green card, and they are green, the legal permanent residency card, you should have that on you. But you don't need to carry your passport around. If you're not getting on an airplane, don't carry your passport around, okay? And really, if you have pieces of paper that relate to a pending immigration case that your lawyer is working on for you, you could carry some of that stuff with you if you choose to answer some of these questions, or you can say, you know what, you're just going to make me confused if I start answering questions. I'm not a lawyer. Would you please let me bring my lawyer here first? So you still have that right.
Great question. Great advice. Michael, any other just common mistakes or rights that you would like to highlight?
I think that people should know that a lot of, particularly, immigrant children have a pathway to legal status. In fact, there's a couple of different potential pathways. And I think that a mistake that some families make is that they don't reach out, they don't look for help. And particularly when it comes to families that are already, or children that are already in some court proceeding, an immigration court proceeding, it's really important that they find out, what the status of their proceeding is. There's a way to do that. There's a online page you can go to. It's, accessible at any time. There's an 800 number you can call, and people can find out, do they have a hearing? What time, when is that hearing? Where is that hearing? And, it's important to know that. It's important to get advice regarding, before you go to that hearing. But, engaging in that process allows the child to then hopefully, find a way to get to permanent status. And a lot of kids do have a pathway to status. So it's really important, to don't miss those hearings, keep track of that and find some advice and, and follow follow the process to hopefully, hopefully get, a way to status, in the long run.
Great advice. Thank you. So, Mrs. Whalen, we haven't heard from you in a while. And for those watching the video, we have had some connectivity issues.
Yes.
I'll take the blame for that, not you. So, Mrs. Whalen, I know you've caught most of the conversation, but anything on your mind, questions or things that you're hearing that you would love for Justin or Michael to address?
So I think just in terms of some guidance on when I'm communicating with families or families reach out, I think in the conversations I've had, families feel comfortable knowing about our safety protocols, and they've always been. It's something that we've always done. We engage in the conversations around attendance, and they understand the importance there. I think there's still some apprehension about to and from school, again, the field trips piece. So just what would be your guidance on those conversations to kind of bring down that apprehension and that nervousness?
Yeah, and this is something that comes up for adults, for kids, for citizens, for immigrants. It's a little scary when you're out there and you're interacting with law enforcement. And if you're not a lawyer, it's going to be really confusing. So, and it's really inappropriate for law enforcement to approach a child in public or anywhere. Children should have a parent and a lawyer, and it's just very confusing. And this has nothing to do with immigration, but there's been all these cases where children will say all sorts of things when they're under pressure, things that aren't true, So instead of getting yourself in trouble, just, wait for your parents, wait for your lawyer. You'll find that a lot of the fears are just overblown. What are really the chances that you're on a field trip and you get off the bus and police or ICE or somebody is asking you questions? I mean, that just, you never really, I taught briefly. I'm better at being a lawyer. I'll just say that. Teaching is hard, and I love teachers. So partly because it was so hard for me. But come on, you're getting off a bus for a school field trip. You've never seen it, right? I've never seen it.
I've never seen it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Michael, anything to add on that topic?
No, I would just say the same thing. I think that's a very unlikely scenario. And in this whole conversation, just trying to minimize the fear is really important. It's not that people don't have a reason to be anxious, but there's the school environment generally is a pretty safe place to be. And all things being considered, that's where kids should be when it's time to be in school, and that includes school activities.
Yeah, that's great. And, combining what the two of you said and Rita's question, when we heard from the ICE agent and he said that, use my name kind of thing, his name was Dr. Patterson, the gentleman that we met with. And he asked the superintendents and the other school administrators in the room, like, help me bring the temperature down. We are not coming to schools. We are not. Please tell your families, we are not coming to schools. I recognize what's being said out there. School is not somewhere where we are going. So between the two of you, like, some of these are fears that just really shouldn't exist. It is not reality. I heard that directly in the same room with Dr. Patterson. So Pam, Rita, any other questions? I know I promised these two very busy gentlemen that we would be 30 to 40 minutes. Right now I have us at 35. So we're right there in that sweet spot. But any last minute questions or things you would like to highlight?
I don't have any questions, but the one thing I'm thinking about is I think the timing of this conversation is so perfect. It is the spring. We are moving into a very festive time of the school year with various activities, particularly at the elementary school. I think about all the incredible activities and events that are taking place in the middle school and high school. And I'm hoping that this conversation is really reassuring for families, because we want them to be in attendance for these very special moments. And I'm hoping that, the idea of kind of being in a place where you're really supported and kind of being reassured based on this conversation will say, you know what? Even if I'm a little nervous, I'm going to go because I know that it will make me feel better to be surrounded by a community of people and to kind of be in a regular routine. So I love that we're doing this at this just right time. I look at the calendar and see how incredibly packed it is and so many things that are going to be taking place. And we just want to make sure that every family member feels really safe and supported participating.
Wonderfully said. Rita, any closing remarks here?
No, to that point though, literacy night at Hatfield tonight, 210 kiddos coming, K2. So we are so excited.
That sounds great. Well, Justin and Michael, thank you so much. Thanks for caring. Thanks for the work that you do. And thank you for, honestly, the free legal advice. I'm sure as attorneys, you're always asked for free legal advice, but we really plan to share this with our community to hopefully alleviate fears, set the record straight, and just want to give both of you the opportunity to say a final word or two if you'd like.
Thank you for hosting us, Todd, Pam, Rita. We both, Mike and I both love North Penn School District. We think it's awesome. We actually represent some kids already in the school district, and it's just such a positive place. Michael and I were talking about this before. Like, where are you safer than at school? Like, come on, in the activities at springtime, like Pam was saying. A school is a place where you should be able to kind of leave the fears and issues of the outside world off to one side and grow up, learn, make friends, learn English. That helps too.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Yeah, Justin, that's great. Thank you for that. Michael, closing remarks.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks to everyone for having this discussion. And, I appreciate our educators so much. It's such an important job. It's such a difficult job. It is. It's a really hard job, what you do on a day-in-day basis, and to stay positive and stay supportive to all these kids. I mean, there's not too many things I can think of that are more important than being a teacher, and bringing up, young minds. These kids really depend on you, and we see it with our clients. We see with these families, the support that they get through the schools. And it really makes a difference. And especially when you're talking about families that maybe are vulnerable for various reasons, they really come to depend on their schools and their teachers. So anyway, kudos to you all for the work that you do every day. And thanks for having this conversation.
Yeah, what a way to end this episode of Educating with Ease. And I'll end with I don't know everything, certainly. I don't know everything about anything. But a common phrase that my dad uses is, I know a thing or two about a thing or two. And I'll tell you what, the people on this podcast care about children, care about families. Justin, you may not reside in the North Penn School District or work in the North Penn School District, but you do work here. And we just appreciate both of you coming on, joining us, helping people feel better. And thanks for the work you're doing every day. Rita, Pam, thank you for always being fierce advocates for kids. Yeah. And with that, everyone, thanks for listening to this episode of Educating with Ease here in the North Penn School District. I'm Todd Bauer. On behalf of Justin, Michael, Rita, and Pam, thanks so much for listening. Take care, everyone.